If you have a desire to become a better version of your current self, then this podcast is for you. I share with you helpful thoughts, tips, and stories surrounding fitness and self-improvement which you can apply to your life today. So for those of you that want to take control of your life, to learn, to grow, to become that which you desire most, I am your host, Connor Malone, and this is the pursuit of constant improvement. In today's episode, we are going to be talking consistency. One of the most vital aspects of your own self-improvement journey is going to be consistency. So in today's episode, I'm going to be sharing with you the mindset that it takes to become a consistent person and some habits and traits and things that you can follow through with to improve your own levels of consistency. Because you probably found that throughout any part of your life, you've had goals, you've had ambitions. All it takes is consistency to help you achieve that. But you've set so many goals in the past that you've never achieved. Most of that is because you've lacked that skill, that trait of consistency. So that's everything we're going to go over today. Is all about consistency. And as I said, we're going to start with mindset, because with the whole idea of becoming a consistent person, it starts, as many things do, in the mind. The way that you perceive the world, the mindset that you have will dictate if you're going to be a consistent person or not. So we're going to go over all of that. I'm going to share with you kind of what it looks like to be a consistent person, the traits you would have to have, and what stops us from becoming consistent. Because that's what a lot of people wonder, is like, why can't I be consistent? We're going to go over all of that today, because for me personally, one of the traits that if you ask any of my closest friends to describe me, that one of the first things that springs to mind for them is consistent. I'm not particularly good at one thing. I'm pretty average at most things, to be honest. But one thing over the past 6 to 8 years of my own self-improvement journey, I have been, and I've never stopped being, is consistent. Like if you think, for example, I've been going to the gym since I was 15 years old. That's 10 years. I've never missed more than a week of training. And even that's happened maybe 2 or 3 times through illness. That's in 10 years. When I look at the content I've created over the past 3 years, I've never stopped creating content. I've tried different variations of content, but I've always kept going with my business, with my reading, my gratitude journals I've done for over 1,000 days. So any area of my life that I've found particularly valuable, I've managed to remain consistent with it. So I'm going to share with you what it takes, how I became that consistent person, because I never was that. I was never consistent before that. It was just something that I developed into. Because consistency, like discipline, is a skill. It's something that we can improve. You can become a consistent person. And that's something really, really important to start us off with, because the idea of consistency, as I said, starts in the mind. If you are closed or fixed-minded, you're really going to struggle to be consistent, because a lot of the reasons why people fail with consistency, they give up or they stop doing things, is because of the attitude they have. It's because of the perspectives that they take. So it all starts, as I said, in the mind from there. And if you cannot change that, your attitude, your mentality, your mindset, then nothing is ever going to change. You're never going to be more consistent. Now, just to expand on that a little bit more, what I mean by mindset is, as I said, the way that we perceive the world. Like I have a different mindset to you. You have a different mindset to your parents, to your siblings, to your friends, to everybody. Everybody sees the world slightly differently. But that's the thing that makes us special. And what it can actually do is helps us it brings us closer to other people. So for example, if I think of some of my closest friends, a lot of them are quite ambitious. They are very consistent. They see the world in a positive and optimistic way. That's what brings me closer to them. So you can see how it really affects us in our life. The way that we see the world depends on who we spend our time with. It depends on how we act. It depends on what we do. And it's no different when it comes to consistency. Because the first aspect of changing that mindset and becoming a more growth-minded person, which enables you to be consistent, is the level of awareness. All change starts with awareness. And what I mean by that is the awareness to realize that change is possible, or that you need to change. Because if you're in a position right now where you haven't been consistent for years, you've told yourself you're going to try this workout routine, you're going to be consistent with the gym, you're going to be consistent with a diet, maybe a business idea, and you've always failed, it's probably because you lack the awareness to see where the problems are. So it all starts with awareness. It starts with you saying, right, I know I've done this wrong, but I'm willing to change, because then your mindset can change and you can take a more kind of growth-focused approach to that. Because if nothing changes with your mind, nothing will change with your actions. So a really important thing to start with that. There's a quote I really like, and it really well summarizes that. It says, "The lips of wisdom are closed except to the ears of the understanding." And what that means is you could be speaking with one of the smartest people in the world in any subject. However, if you are too close-minded and narrow-minded, you aren't going to take on board anything that they tell you. So again, the lips of wisdom are closed except to the ears of the understanding. That's that awareness I was speaking about. Once you become aware that there is a problem, once you become aware that you can change that, you've opened your mind up to growth, you've opened your mind up to improvement, now you can make change. Because again, if a lot of the reasons why you're failing to be consistent are coming from your fixed mindset, that will never change until your mindset changes. So one of the very first things we need to be aware of is that if we lack awareness, we'll lack the ability to change. So once you realize that, consistency then becomes possible. Because it is most people's downfall. Nothing good happens without it. In fact, if you think of anything that good has happened in your life, anything you've achieved, it's come through consistency. You think of school, you think of university, you think of your jobs. Consistency brings rewards. We need to be consistent. So if you lack that, then you're never going to get to a position where you want to be. So a few of the things we're going to go over next are going to be the mindset of the inconsistent and why they struggle to be inconsistent. And then what we're going to do is talk about the mindset of someone more consistent, how we develop that, and how we can apply these things into your life to make you that more consistent person. Now, the first thing about the mindset of the inconsistent is they quit. Anytime that something gets difficult, they quit. And they think, right, that's it, it's done. They lack patience. And it is your lack of patience and your willingness to quit that stops you from being consistent. And this all, again, comes back to the mindset because you want things to happen too quickly. So how many times have you been to the gym or followed the diet and I'm not seeing results or whatever, and you just quit? Nothing good comes from that. And again, this all relates back to our mindset, the way we perceive things. We need to take the long game. We need to play with the long-term approach. Because if you're always wanting things to happen quickly, guess what? It's not reality. It's not how life works. So you're always going to constantly quit and fail and then try again and quit and fail. Patience is a very, very difficult skill to develop, but it's something that if you do, it will totally help you with your consistency. Consistency takes time. Everything worth achieving takes time. So patience, that's where it comes from. So somebody that is inconsistent, they lack that. They lack patience. They want things to happen too fast, and they cannot delay gratification. Now, what I mean by that is we're often faced with a choice every single day. It could be something as simple as you're hungry, you could choose to have a quick, snack, a chocolate bar, whatever, or you could choose to not eat just now and wait till later on until you have a proper meal. That is, if you had to choose that option, you'd be delaying gratification. Whereas what most people do is they're like, oh, do you know what? I want this kind of pleasure now. I want this dopamine hit now. And then they choose the chocolate bar just now. They have an inability to delay gratification. And it's what a lot of people actually, within the self-improvement space, they say that one of the great traits you can have comes from your ability to delay gratification. If you can put off what you want now for what you want most, what you want later, that's where you'll gain consistency. And again, this comes back to our attitude, our perspective. We need to look at things that way. So when you are faced with that choice of, oh, I could have this chocolate bar now, do you think, no, listen, I know my body's telling me I want that, I'm craving that, but what I want most is this physique. I want to change, I want to drop body fat, I want to improve the way I look, I want to improve the way I feel. And I know that eating that chocolate bar isn't going to make me feel any better. So again, it comes back to that, it comes back to our decisions. But if you have the ability to be patient and delay gratification, you're then going to become more consistent because of it. Another thing that I see a lot with people that are inconsistent is they cannot keep their goals or their thoughts to themselves. It's like anytime you have a goal, if your first instinct is to tell people about it, not a good sign. Because then what happens is you tell people about your goals, you tell people, oh, I might do this, I might do that, and you never end up doing it. So you crush your own confidence because you never follow through on your words. So how are you going to be consistent? Whereas people that tend to be very consistent and very good at following through on their word, they keep things to themselves. Now, I mean this in the aspect of goals, of course. If you have goals, keep them to yourself. Let your action do the talking and then start to tell people about it. Otherwise, it will reduce how consistent you are. So again, rather than talking and going and telling everybody about it, start to act instead. Acta non verba is a Latin phrase I really like. Actions, not words. Now, to summarize that, it all comes back to the idea of patience, delaying gratification. Rather than going and telling everybody what you want to do, start to do it instead. Okay, because again, those are all traits of someone that is inconsistent, someone that can't keep their word, someone that tells everybody about all their goals, someone that cannot delay gratification. Now, somebody that is consistent, the mindset of a consistent person, these are some of the things that I always see within those people, as they have a clear desired goal. Essentially, they know what they want. Because you're going to struggle to be consistent towards something if you don't know why it is that you're doing it. It's like, right, why do you want to reduce your calories and go to the gym more? Because you want to get in good shape. Well, why do you want to get in good shape? What are the insecurities? What are the thoughts that are the pain points at the back of your mind that are stopping you? What are those things that you're like, you don't want to feel this way anymore? Maybe it's your crippling lack of confidence. You can use that as a good thing. You can use that as like, right, I'm going to help this make me better by making better decisions, because I don't want to be that person anymore. I don't want to lack confidence. So I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to do these things. So if you have a clear reason why you're doing something, you're much more likely to be consistent with it. Because so many people make these goals like, oh, I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to do this. And then as soon as they are faced with any form of difficulty, they just collapse and then they fall and then their consistency goes. Because Nietzsche had this quote and he said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." And it's a great quote, because if you have a very strong reason for doing something, you're going to follow through and do it. If you don't have a strong reason for doing something, a strong reason why, you are much more likely to fail. You're much more likely to be inconsistent. So that is a trait of somebody who is consistent. They have a strong reason for doing something. So think of that. Anything you want to achieve, anything you want to be consistent with, dive deeper into that. Why do you really want this? Because times are going to get tough. Things are going to get difficult. And you're going to want to quit. But the thing that's going to keep you consistent is that reason why. That thing that keeps you pushing forward. So get really clear in that. It's one of the first things I do with my clients. We create this idea of an ideal self. I ask them questions, we delve deeper into it and find out, why do you want to be this type of person? We tie it to emotion. It's like, right, what emotions are you having right now that you don't like? What emotions do you want to have more of? Because then they start to paint a picture of the type of life that they want, the type of physique they want to have, the type of routine they want to have. And then once you tie some emotion to that, you become much more likely to be consistent because you really, really want that thing. So that's something that's consistent amongst everybody I know that are high performers, and they have a high level of consistency from there. Another thing in terms of the mindset of the consistent is they are focused on output and not outcomes. So what I mean by that is, if every single week you're focused purely on, oh, well, I need to have this set outcome, things need to go this way or that way, you're putting too much to chance. Like, you cannot control everything. However, one thing you can always control is your level of output. In terms of the effort you put in. You can't control the results all the time. You can influence them, but you can't control them fully. But again, if we start to take the idea of focusing on your output rather than the outcome, you become far more consistent. Because people quit when they don't reach a certain goal. They're like, oh, well, I never got this week, or I never done this, so I'm just going to quit. Whereas if you're focused on your output, you think, well, I put in the effort this week. I'm going to get closer and closer to my goals. I just need to keep consistent with that. So again, focus on output, not outcome. You'll find with people that are inconsistent, they're always tied to outcomes. They're always like, oh, I want this, I want that. And as soon as they don't get it, or as soon as they're not making progress towards it, they quit, they fail. Another thing is, and it's kind of tied in with that, is do not tie your success purely to results. Don't base your weeks off of like, oh, this will be successful only if I do this. When we tie it to our output, it's much more controllable. We want to make as many controllable factors as possible trackable. So it's like, right, okay, is my effort here? Great, let's move on, let's go. Whereas if you just say, oh, well, if I don't get this, then I've not had a good week or whatever, then you're leaving it out with your control. We don't want to do that. We want to minimize anything that's out of our control. And as I said, the only thing we can always control is our output, the way we respond to things, the way that we act. Now, another thing is that with the mindset of people that are consistent, they are focused on themselves, not on what other people think, not on what other people think they should be doing. They're focused purely on themselves. When you have a very strong reason why, a really strong reason for doing something, that is really going to help. Because a lot of people might want to, I don't know, lose weight purely based off how other people see them. But then if people start to change their opinion, maybe they get jealous and they start to throw hateful comments. This happens all the time. I see it with clients. They lose a lot of weight and then family members become jealous because it's basically bringing out their own insecurities. They're seeing the effort that they're putting in, and then they're getting angry or annoyed at the fact they're not putting in the same level of effort. So then they start making snide comments like, oh, well, oh, you looked better before, or this or that. And if you care too much about what other people think, then that's going to change your actions. It's going to make you either less consistent or change your course. Whereas if you're so tied to an end goal that you want so badly, it's not going to matter what other people say. And that's a powerful position to be in. So like if I look at me when I started making content, it's like, yeah, people took the piss a little bit. People make snide comments and things like that. But I was really clear on why I was doing it. I knew exactly why I wanted to do it. So a comment from somebody else wasn't going to put me off. It puts you in a really strong position. So again, don't be guided by others. It's something I see all the time. People do things based off what other people want them to do. People wear certain clothes because other people think they'll be cool. People do certain things because of how other people will perceive them to be. Once you start to disconnect from that and you do things because you really want it, for a real strong reason why, you're going to become far more consistent. So again, everything comes back to that. Do what you want most. Find out what you truly want and push through. Because as Nietzsche said, he who has a why to live can bear almost any how. Now, when it comes to that, that's obviously the mindset that we need to develop in order to be consistent. But how do we actually build consistency? I have a lot of processes for this because when clients come to me, that is the main thing they lack. It's like, right, I've tried this, I've tried that, I've done this for a week, I've done this for 2 weeks, but they lack the consistency. So I'm going to share with you how I actually help them become consistent, because I have a 4-step self-improvement system that helps them do that. And I'm going to share parts of that with you today. Now, the very first thing, the second part of my process, but one of the first things that should be for most people is realizing what stops us from being consistent. So it's like, it's all good and well saying, I'm going to bring in this, I'm going to bring in that, but what truly stops you from being consistent? Now, the first one, as we just spoke about, is that lack of reasoning. They have a lack of a reason why. And the first step with my self-improvement system is creating an ideal self, as I spoke about. We get really clear on why it is they want what it is they're saying that they want. So once you create that for yourself, you're like, right, this is the type of person I want to become. This is why. You tie it to some emotion. It's a really strong starting position because you've realized what you want. And now what you can do is look into your life and say, right, what holds me back from that? What stops me from that? And it is usually bad habits, which is to step 2 of my self-improvement system. And it is removing bad habits. So again, you have this vision of where you want to be, the type of person you want to become, the type of routine, the type of physique you want to build. What is stopping you from getting there? Is it your environments that you're in? Is it your eating habits? Is it maybe your mindset? What aspects of it is stopping you from becoming that type of person? Because then we need to start removing bad habits. For most people, it is overconsumption of course, food, but commonly alcohol. If they're over-consuming alcohol, they're in terrible moods, they're consuming too many calories. A lot of their problems stem from that. Their lack of motivation, their lack of drive, their lack of consistency because of the hangovers that comes from the alcohol, the overconsumption of the alcohol. So that's always a common one. But again, if we realize what it is that holds us back from being consistent, we're much more likely to actually start being consistent. So why are you skipping the gym? Because I'm not getting enough sleep the night before. Okay, well, there's one of the first things you need to sort. Why do you skip the gym on a Sunday, a Monday, and a Tuesday? Because I'm hungover from the weekend. Well, if your why is strong enough, then you're surely going to want to give up drinking as often or as much, because that's going to help you push towards your goal. But again, we wouldn't have known any of this if we hadn't looked at what our ideal self was, what we truly want, what our reason for doing this is, and if we hadn't looked now at what those bad habits are, what's holding us back. But this is how we truly start to build consistency. We look at those bad habits and we start to remove them, which can be a really tough step, but it is a necessary step for everybody. So again, as I said, you make it clear on where you want to be. One of the things that I think it really helps with is it creates clear standards for us. Because right now you probably lack your own standards. You don't know what exactly you have to do every single week. You don't know what the steps are in order to get to where you want to be. That is critical, because if you don't have standards to hold yourself to, then how are you going to be consistent? It's like in business, there's things called SOPs, like standard operating procedures. Those are things that are in place so people know what to do to get certain things done. You almost need them for yourself. You need standards. It's like, right, what am I going to look to do every single week? I'm going to look to train 4 times per week. I'm going to look to follow this plan. I'm going to look to do that. Once you start to outline these steps, you create standards for yourself. You create things that you can actually try to achieve. I do this through creating non-negotiables for my clients. So it's weekly non-negotiables, things that they have to do on a weekly basis in order to become the type of person that they want to become. So again, we make it really clear for them. These are the things you need to do in order to get to where you want to be. Because a lot of people lack consistency because they don't know, first of all, where they want to be and how to get there. Once you know those 2 things, you can start to become consistent and push forward from there. Now, another thing that this is a huge part of my coaching process is the aspect of planning and preparation. Because if you do not plan your weeks, you do not review your weeks, you're leaving everything up to chance. You're not going to be able to see what's going right and what's going wrong. So first of all, when it comes to, I always start with reviewing your week. People always think, all right, we start on a Monday or whatever, things like that. But let's start with a review of the week. What went well this week? What didn't go well this week? That's how we start to plan the week ahead based off the past. So if you have a process for reviewing your weeks, asking yourself what went well, what didn't go well, it then means that you know what to change for the next week ahead. It's a huge part of my coaching process. It's something that I do every single week. On a Sunday or a Monday, I sit down and I review my week. I have a 5-step process to reviewing it. It's 5 really simple questions. I answer the same ones every week, and it helps me gain so much clarity for my week ahead. Once you gain clarity, that helps a lot with consistency. Because as I said, the reason that a lot of people lack consistency is because they're not sure what they should be doing, what they shouldn't be doing, and exactly what they're doing. Whereas by reviewing your weeks, it helps you to be able to make it clear. These are the things I need to do. These are the things I need not to do this week. See if you want the 5 questions that I use. Message me on Instagram. If you just send me a message saying, hey Connor, can I get your weekly review? I'll send it over to you. It's free. As I said, I've done it every single week. I've done it for 2 years now, actually. That same weekly review, 5 questions. Sometimes I'll chop and change them, but it's the 5 that I feel the most valuable, and it really, really helps me. And again, it's one of the reasons why I've managed to stay consistent, because it allows me to see things that are going well, and if things aren't going well, then I can remove them. Things like bad habits, for example. And that's essentially my weekly plan. Because once I've reviewed my week, it makes it clear what I need to do for the week ahead to make it a success. And then I plan it into my week ahead. So again, effectively planning and preparing for your weeks is really going to help with consistency going forward. Now, another thing for consistency is effective goal setting. Because goal setting is a big thing. People are like, oh, I need to set goals. I need to do this. Or maybe I follow this goal setting structure or process. The thing that I've always found best is not to overcomplicate it. Like you can use a fancy app or a fancy system or whatever, but we need to keep things simple. Consistency thrives with simplicity. If you try to overcomplicate things, you're going to make it harder for yourself. It's the same when I talk to clients about bad habits. You think of bad habits as a chain that's wrapped around you. If there's too many bad habits and they're too heavy, they're going to weigh you down, they're going to pull you back. It's the same if we add too many steps to things. If we add too many steps, too many processes, you've got too many opportunities to fail, therefore lack consistency. So the best things in life are often simple. Now, the way I do it, I'll share with you the way that I set goals personally. I have a really simple system for my clients that I do it with, but that involves me coaching them. The way that I do it personally is I start with this vision I have, this ideal self. So I know what it is that I want, the type of guy that I want to be, the type of traits, the type of characteristics that I want to embody. As soon as I know that, I can reverse engineer, which means that I know the place I want to be. How do I get there? I work backwards from there. It's a really effective way to set goals is you get the end point, the point where you want to be, and you work backwards from there rather than starting from the beginning and then getting to the end point and realizing, shit, this isn't actually where I want to be. So again, we reverse engineer. I do that off the back of one big vision, the type of person I want to be, which can chop and change from time to time. But the idea is I've always got something to pursue, always something to improve. Now, off the back of that, I set monthly goals. You can set daily, you can set weekly, you can set yearly, doesn't really matter. I like to set monthly goals because it gives me a great structure for the whole month. Obviously, we have 12 months in a year. It's a good number. 4 weeks tends to be a really good time in order for you to make progress. It's also not too long. It's not too far away. It's not too short. If you want to, you can break it down into weeks, but it really helps me create clarity for my year. Because what I do is I have this big vision, and at the start of every month, I'll say, right, what are the things that I would like to work towards this month? Again, I can't always control if I'm going to totally achieve all of them. In fact, most of the time I don't. I probably maybe achieve 50 to 60% of them, but I work towards all of them. And that doesn't affect me in a negative way because, again, I focus on the output, not the outcome. So as long as I've done the best that I can to work towards those goals, I'm happy at the end of the month. So again, I start with a big vision, then I set monthly goals. Can be 3 to 6 goals. Things that by the end of the month I would have liked to have achieved. Could be to do with a number of workouts. For me, it's usually business goals, goals with clients, goals with content. I set these clear expectations, which then gives me standards for the month and things that I can actually follow through on and try and hold myself to. Off the back of that, the 2 ways that I work towards those goals, because it's very, very important that I mention this. You can have as many goals as you like or as big goals if you like. If you do not have ways to actually push towards those goals, you're never going to do it. So it's like, right, I have this vision, I have these monthly goals. Good. Now, how am I actually going to achieve them? So for me, that is first of all my weekly non-negotiables. which are aligned with the type of person I want to be, which means I have to train a certain amount of times per week. I need to read a certain amount of pages per week. I need to spend a certain amount of time on content, working with clients, whatever it happens to be. I have clear expectations every single week because I know if I follow through on those things, I push closer to become the type of guy that I want to be. So setting weekly non-negotiables is a good thing. So look at your monthly goals. What's going to help you push towards that every week? Those would be your weekly non-negotiables. Again, they shouldn't be overcomplicated. They should be really simple. The other thing I do is key tasks. So my weekly non-negotiables don't really change. They stay the same for months and months at a time because they're tied to my big vision. However, the key tasks, they will change month to month. So what I mean by that is they may not be things that I need to be consistent with week after week after month, but for this month, it would really help if I increase this. For example, if my goal was to take on a certain amount of clients, then maybe I would want to increase a certain amount of content. Or maybe my goal for the month was to release a new project. Well, then I need to put in more hours on that project. So my key task would be, for example, to spend 3 hours a week on just that task. Again, so we do that weekly non-negotiables and key tasks, which come off the back of this big vision and monthly goals. That's how I set a lot of my goals. Again, you don't need to follow that. It might give you some inspiration as to how you can structure your goal setting process. But again, if we set clear and simple goals, it helps us with consistency. If a goal is too complex or it's too far in the future, you're going to lack drive to achieve that because it's too far away from you, especially if you're someone who lacks patience in the beginning, which, as I said, is something we need to develop. Now, one of the things I've been working on recently is this thing called the 6-week accelerator, which is a version of my online coaching program, which lasts 6 weeks. And what it does is it helps people make more progress in 6 weeks than they have in the past 6 months, which sounds like a big statement. But if you think back to your last 6 months, how many things could you bring to me and say, oh, I've made progress here. I've done this with my physique. I've lost this much weight. I've built this much muscle. I've been consistent with this or that. For most people, there isn't many things. Whereas what I do is I add the structure, the direction, and the accountability that people are needing to be more consistent over that 6-week period. So this is something that I'm offering over the next few weeks. If that sounds like something you'd be interested in, there is a video link in the description which explains everything about it. So again, 6 weeks of coaching to help you achieve more progress in those 6 weeks than you have in the past 6 months, to do with your physique, with dropping body fat and building a routine that you can be truly proud of. I've done this. We've got 6 people in the program so far. It's been going really well. Again, we get them set up within 48 hours. So if that's something that's interesting you, as I said, I've got a video that explains everything to do with it, and it's in the description below, so you can give that a little look. Now, to finish today's episode, I have a quote from James Clear, which is a really good one. Again, simple, but it highlights the importance of simplicity. And he says, intensity makes a good story. Consistency makes progress. How many times have you heard from a friend or from somebody like, oh, I'm doing this, I'm doing so well, I've done this amount of workouts this week, I've tracked this amount of meals, I've done this much work on this much work on that. They tell you all these amazing, it's super intense, but then guess what? 2 or 3 weeks later, they've stopped. The intensity sounds great. It makes a great story. Everybody loves that. Oh, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm doing that. They're doing all these things, but eventually they're going to stop because they don't have the foundations, they don't have the mindset, they don't have the patience, they don't have the goal setting in place. They don't have all these things that they need in order to be consistent. So again, everybody wants to look good. Everybody wants to tell you about all their crazy habits that they do. But what's actually going to make progress is consistency. So we need to drop the ego. We need to zoom out and focus. Look at the big picture. How am I going to be consistent and working towards these goals? Because that is what's going to get us results. Because if I look at myself, I done something called a high performance day. I done it once per week. It was a hyper productive day once per week. I done it for 2 years, okay? I didn't tell anybody about that for 8 months. Then I started to tell people about it because I became consistent with it. I could have flashed it about and told people about it and everything like that because it all looks great, but I didn't do that until I was consistent. Same with every project I've ever followed, whether it be the podcast, my clothing brand, my coaching business. Nobody knew about it until it was launched. I put in the work first of all. So I encourage you to do the same. Put in the work, build a consistency, and then you'll begin to thrive. But as ever, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I hope this has gave you a lot of ideas of how you can become a more consistent person and things that you can apply to your own pursuit of constant improvement. Thank you for listening.